that one finds in the village of Myvockley in County Westmeath. So there has been a huge, I think, sea change in people's attitudes and people's endeavours at remembering.
A silent thought, a silent tear, keeps his memory ever dear. Well, that's taken from the headstone of a 19-year-old soldier who perished on the Leinster. And I think it really sums up how anybody would feel who lost somebody during the Great War. Now, tomorrow is Armistice Day, and there'll be commemorative events here, but particularly in Belgium. We'll be there, and you can see that programme on Wednesday night here on RTE1. So until then, from Grange Gorman Military Cemetery and from everybody on the Nationwide team, Iwahagwif agus Gadeshiv Slán.
And on next Wednesday's programme, we'll be in Ypres to join the international service for the fallen of the First World War, including the Irish from north and south. We follow a group of Irish as they visit some of the battlefields in which we fought and the cemeteries where the fallen lie. We hear the story of the part the Irish played in those horrific struggles in places like Messines and the Ypres salients. How the Belgians remember the role of the Irish, and the Peace Park which commemorates those soldiers who came here from the whole island of Ireland and gave their lives in defence of small nations.
Coverage of the Opal
On Nationwide this evening, we'll be in Ypres to join the international service for the fallen of the First World War, including the Irish from north and south. We follow a group of Irish as they visit some of the battlefields in which we fought and the cemeteries where the fallen lie. How the Belgians remember the role of the Irish, and the Peace Park which commemorates those soldiers who came here from the whole island of Ireland and gave their lives in defence of small nations. It was the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of the year 1918 when the guns of the First World War fell silent, and hundreds of thousands of soldiers throughout the continent thanked God they'd survived, and that the war, which was supposed to end all wars, had itself finally ended. These 90 years later, we're back here in southern Belgium, scene of some of the most ferocious battles and unspeakable horrors of the Great War. And we're here to remember the role of Irishmen in those enormous struggles between nations, and here to see how those Irishmen who fought and died here in Flanders Field are commemorated today. At the Menengate in Ypres, dedicated, as the inscription puts it, to those whom the fortunes of war denied the known and honoured burial given their comrades in death, the Irish too were amongst those who gathered from around the world to remember the dead. Minister of State Martin Manser was amongst those who came forward to lay a wreath. And amongst the Irish bands who came here to the Island of Ireland Peace Park, Cork's Barrack Street Band, 39 of whose members marched off to the First World War. They don't know how many came back. Under the round tower, which commemorates the tens of thousands of Irishmen from north and south who died here, a new willingness to honour them was underlined by the presence of Lord Mayors and Mayors from half a dozen Irish towns and cities, and a representative of the Belgian royal family. In the Ireland of 1914, there were many reasons why a young man might sign up and take the uniform. Some thought they were buying home rule. Others believed themselves to be defending the rights of all nations. Some found it simply glamorous in the context, and others simply took the wage because there was no other available. They came here to Flanders Field and they died in their droves in this landscape which extends out from what is now the Island of Ireland Peace Park. Derek Smith is a historian. Derek, as we look out here, we would see areas, the place names of which leap out of our history books. Like what sort of places?
Places like the where we're standing, Messines, which is central to the Irish psyche. and was the occasion of two divisions diametrically opposed in political outlook. That's the 36th Ulster Division and the 16th Irish Division, fighting side by side, and very successfully. From that land down there, advanced to this ridge, and after the mines were exploded under the Germans' positions, rushed forward and secured the entire ridge, along with the help of Australian and New Zealand troops. They didn't stop there. They went over the ridge for another couple of miles and gave the Germans perhaps their greatest reverse for 2 years. It was, in terms of the First World War, an entirely successful attack, and the Irish people, north and south, were at the centre of it.
And the conditions in which they were fighting and trying to live were just appalling.
Almost indescribable. Today is a wet and windy day. No rain just at the moment, but they endured frost, snow, continual damp, and that was a problem because this is clay ground, it doesn't drain well. And over at places like Passchendaele, the battlefield became, in effect, a swamp. Men and horses drowned in shell holes. Men suffered from trench foot, not a minor ailment. It was crippling. And under those circumstances, men were simply worn down without the Germans trying to kill them.
And how important or significant would the role of the Irish in particular have been?
It was central. The Irish are a warrior race, and at this particular point, the divisions were at a very high point of efficiency. Now, a few months later, when they fought north of the city at a place called Langemarck, it was a victory, but a Pyrrhic one, and in effect undermined both divisions, who were again performing side by side. But the Irish, of course, have been in the British Army for centuries. In the 19th century, up to 40% of the British Army, in fact, was Irish. And as well as the Irish divisions and formations, you had them scattered through every regiment.
And when they came home, they were not loaded back in the south of Ireland.
Yes, what became the Free State and then the Republic, they weren't, but they weren't badly treated. 10 years ago tomorrow, when this tower was opened by 3 heads of state, I think it was a landmark and a rapprochement between the Southern Ireland and the memory of the Great War.
So you might say that those who died here gave us that tool for reconciliation?
I believe so. 90 years ago.
But when those Irish soldiers who survived returned home, they did not receive the hero's welcome which was accorded to the armies of Britain, of course, of France, Australia, and so on. But while Ireland airbrushed its role out of that history, the Belgians swore never to forget. Author Geert Spielebaan can tell us more about that. Geert, how is the Irish role in the First World War here remembered?
Well, we in fact did not forget what the Irish did and what happened in Ireland just before the war. People here in Belgium and in Flanders who read books, people who know their history, they know what happened and they remember, for instance, Home Rule just before the start of the Great War. They know that promise of Home Rule and they know why Catholic and Protestant soldiers from Ireland came to Flanders and to France to fight.
And how deep is that understanding? I mean, would it be taught in the schools, for instance? Would there be awareness at that level?
Yes, because it's very important what happened here in the First World War. It's a good example how people can come together regardless of their differences, regardless of their different opinions and backgrounds. Catholic and Protestant soldiers who were enemies at home fought side by side.
Well, while the role of the Irish in the Great War might have been dropped from our history books and now happily more fully commemorated yet again, it was of course never forgotten here in southern Belgium. And in cemeteries like this you'll find names like Murphy,